Hi everybody, welcome to Jimmy Young's one-on-one interview show here on the Needham channel. I'm Jimmy Young and I'm very happy to be joined in studio by one of my favorite personalities in the Needham area, Rabbi J. Perlman from Temple Beth Shalom. Rabbi J, great to see you.
Great to see you.
Basically what I need to do is give you a little bit of a, story about who you are, where you grew up. You grew up in Malden. Your wife Emily's from St. Louis. You have two beautiful children.
I do.
And you've been with Temple Beth Shalom, I believe, since 2003.
That's right.
Over 700 families are at that temple. And I know, and I'm not going to embarrass you too much, but I know it has a lot to do with you. Because you do a terrific job, and as someone who goes on a somewhat regular basis besides the high holidays, I've always enjoyed your work and what you do there.
You're kind.
Yeah, I try to be. In fact, my dad's the nicest guy in the world. I try to live up to his model every day.
God bless.
God bless is right. I want to talk a little bit about how you learned, if you will, your love of sports.
I wouldn't say that I necessarily learned a love of sports. I think it was very natural, like most kids growing up, a lot of kids growing up. I fell in love with the Red Sox in the 1970s and fell in love with the Celtics of the 80s. We were talking a little bit earlier about Johnny Most, and I remember very vividly listening to Johnny Most's broadcasts. I had an AM transistor radio that I would sneak under my pillow, and so when my parents said goodnight, I would turn it on and listen to the broadcasts and the Larry Glick show right afterwards, and just sort of took all that in, and it just became a part of me, and it stays with me.
What is it about this area that is so passionate about sports? I mean, is it because, was it the 67 Red Sox, which is when I started to really become a fanatic? But the stories of the teams always seem to be fun. And perhaps that's a reason why we all are into sports.
Yeah.
You use sport in a lot of your messages and your sermons, whether it's at a bar bat mitzvah or a high holiday.
Sure.
Why do you do that?
I just think that it's something that we all relate to. First of all, it comes from my heart. It's something that I love. It's something that I enjoy watching and following. And I think that it's part of a broader narrative that many people fall in love with, and it's so emotional and it's so deep. And I think that there's a lot to learn from the sports stories, but it's a connector. It's a way that helps us to sort of share something and to build a relationship and to be able to then to share a message and to listen to messages. So.
That's it. And one of the high holidays this year, Yom Kippur, you use the Bill Buckner story.
Yes.
Talk to myself a little bit. Let's review a little bit why you use that. I have an idea of why, but I'd love to hear from you and how you related that to life.
No, I think so one of the meta messages of the high holidays is asking for forgiveness when we have hurt somebody, and then offering forgiveness when somebody comes and asks for it from us. And so it's a holiday about repairing relationships. And so if we think sort of in a spiritual realm, that we reach in three directions. We reach within, we reach out to others, and in some way we reach to God. What I focused on during the holidays was really the notion of what does it mean not only to forgive other people, but what does it mean for us to seek forgiveness from ourselves, to forgive ourselves when we have fallen short. And that's something that a lot of people have difficulty with, understandably so. It's very natural. And so amongst the examples that I shared was I talked about the '86 World Series, and I talked about Bill Buckner and the fact that that he had probably one of the greatest gaffes in sports history.
He never should have been in at that point, right? Dave Stapleton should have been in there.
That's exactly right, and his legs were, and all people remember was that. And for many people, that's Bill Buckner. But what I've always found fascinating about Bill Buckner is that never defined him in his eyes, and that he was able to see sort of the broader talent that he had brought to the game, the broader career that he had really accrued over time. And so he was able to not allow that one mistake to define himself. And I thought that would really bring the message home, if you will, during the holidays, and it did.
It certainly did, especially for someone who was actually in that locker room after that game. And Mr. Buckner answered every question.
Wow.
And I remember them asking over and over and over again, what was going through your mind when that happened? He says, well, the first thing that popped into my mind was I get to play in Game 7 of the World Series,
right.
Which, again, goes to your message. life goes on. Look at the positive side. Don't think about the ball going through your legs and the fact that everybody's going to forever kind of align themselves with that memory of you, because his stats can be argued that they're Hall of Fame worthy.
Absolutely.
And, and he's a great guy. I think he had 17 years in the majors, 285, 2,700 hits, maybe 2,500 hits in that range.
Good.
Not a big stats guy, but I think that certainly decent numbers.
Yeah.
And that was one of the toughest assignments, needless to say. When you actually got a glimpse of Bruce Hurst, congratulations, MVP, World Series, Red Sox on the message board, and, well, you know what they say, we learn from our mistakes, right? Isn't that it? And that was an amazing an event to be at, and an amazing thing to go through, both as a fan and as a journalist, because when the red light goes on, you can't really be the fan, but you have to be too, because you felt so bad. And you felt worse the next night. But at least you were used to that. That's what I said. Well, I've never seen him win a World Series. I remember 67 and 75, and I was at Game 6 and 7 of 1975.
Well, we're lucky we get to say that we've now seen them win 3 World Series.
And I look up when I go to the JetBlue terminal, and I see all those banners up there, and I marvel at the incredible run that the Boston area has been on over the last 14 years, certainly in the 21st century. You mentioned Celtics and Red Sox. If you had to pick your favorite of the 4, if you had to pick.
Yeah, I think in my heart of hearts, I'm a Red Sox fan. It's like, and I always have been. I've been following them. Basketball changed a lot for me after the 1980s. It became a little bit more challenging to sort of follow the NBA and some of the personalities in the NBA. And I do care about the behavior of the players. I do care about what happens off the field. I think that locker rooms develop a soul. And so I don't want to just be a fan of laundry. I want to really root for a team. I want to root for personalities that are worthy of following. And so, basketball it changed a little bit, and I think it's coming back now. But the Red Sox are still close to my heart.
Good, man. And I bleed green. I'm a Celtics guy. And it's funny, you mentioned the emotion and the spirituality of a locker room, and some of the lessons that sport teaches all of us through example. And if you're lucky enough to either be on a professional team or any team that actually not only enjoys winning a championship, but even some of the teams that I coached and played on that didn't win a game, there were lessons learned from that. How important is spirituality in sport? And chemistry, especially in baseball, because the Red Sox last year, let's face it.
Right. I can't necessarily say that spirituality is necessarily important in sports. I see tremendous spirituality through sports. Just in terms of the cohesion of a team, the messages of what it means to be supportive of each other. There are a lot of sort of meta themes in baseball. There are a lot of rituals that take place in baseball, as we know. The whole notion of just going to a baseball game is, take me away from it all. Take me out to the ball game, take me out to the crowd, take me out of everything. Sports in general, we know comes from the word disport, which means to separate oneself from all of the regular rhythm of life and all the craziness to sort of go into something that is a little bit more ideal. And in baseball, that's a big part of the sport itself.
And yet it's also one that lives and dies on statistics, and it can be analyzed over and over. But as you know, sometimes the team with the best stats doesn't win. And really, you only have to look at 2014 and 2013 as examples. We had 2 wildcard teams in the World Series this year. And last year, everything that could go right for the Red Sox went right. And they actually provided a great escape for the city of Boston, where the city of Boston had gone through such a horrific Patriots Day bomb that went off in the marathon bombing, and using the Red Sox to rally.
Right. The Red Sox became the community marketplace. That's where the messages of resilience and fighting back, that was one of the major places where people gathered from all corners and all stripes and all ways in order to hear, think about it, in order to hear the message that that violence, that hatred, that's not going to define who we are. Where do we hear those messages? Oftentimes we're in our corners, we're often at home and at work and doing. Where do we come together to hear those messages that help us to redefine our values or to reaffirm, our values? It was certainly in our houses of worship, but it was at the ballpark in that particular year. And I think that the Red Sox developed a really special, close, and important connection to the city at that time.
You mentioned rooting for laundry. In this day of free agency and players staying for a year and then playing out their contract and leaving, has it been more difficult to really align yourself with the team because of the turnover of players?
I mean, I can only speak for myself.
I'm only asking you right now.
For myself personally, I think that I don't see it that way. Only in that I think that just the nature of the game is that the GMs, the coaches, the ownership of teams, that they're moving chess pieces around, they're trading pieces around, they're trying to get so that's all part of the game. So somebody can come into your team for a year and then be as much a part of the team as anybody else, and then moving on. I think that's just part of the strategy of the game itself, as opposed to sort of coming in just temporarily and seeing it that way.
You mentioned something about the off-field behavior of athletes. They automatically become role models for young people just because they play their sport at the highest level, because they're professionals. Some players embrace that, and others, like Charles Barkley, who's a perfect example, doesn't want to have anything to do with being a role model. The role of the athlete now, and isn't it more important now than ever before? Because really and truly, everybody walks around with a camera. There's videos everywhere, Ray Rice, and that's really puts everybody who is in the public eye on notice, and yet they still don't get it.
Right.
Frustrating?
Right. I think for me, it's incredibly frustrating. I mean, I'm not just a rabbi. I'm a dad. I mean, my daughter is also a sports fan. My son more so a sports fan. He's 10 years old. I mean, when he's watching, when I'm watching, when we're seeing what's going on, and we're talking about a particular player, and then they hear from the news or wherever that this is happening and that's happening, it's confusing and it's hard. And so, at least from where I sit, if you're going to play the game and you're going to be you're going to embrace this role and you're going to take home the dollars that go along with it, I think that there's a responsibility, an added burden. And it might be a burden, but it's a burden, an added responsibility that comes along with playing the game because you're doing it on behalf of a team, an organization, and a city. And a lot of eyes are watching you.
Absolutely. I don't want you to go anywhere. I don't think you are going to go anywhere, but we are going to take a little break to give a shameless plug for the talk show that I'm hosting along with my mentor, Jimmy Myers, every Monday night out at the Knobscott Cafe in Framingham. And when we come back, we'll continue our one-on-one talk with Rabbi Jay Perlman from Temple Beth Shalom. Don't go away. I'm Jimmy Young, along with Jimmy Myers. Say hello, Jimmy.
I'm still here.
I know, you can say hello, Jimmy.
Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
Good, how are you, Jimmy?
It's wonderful to see you, Jimmy.
Nice to see you too, Jimmy.
No. You can say how you want. No. Because
does that
to be
say that?
objective, he's supposed to be objective.
He's a network
His job
president.
is
What?
a network.
He's not a journalist. He's not a journalist. He's a businessman.
To me, ladies and gentlemen, it was wrong. He does not belong there. Now you can argue all you want.
No, we have to go back and forth. It's going to be an argument.
Go ahead.
That you almost become that person vicariously while you're writing it.
This is not going to be the stuff you're going to hear on your local radio station.
Jimmy, you're a legend, kid. I had to show
He is totally a legend, and so that he is not the only person that is saying you're suspended for this many games, you're suspended for that many games.
All I have to do is stay black and look good. That's all I got to do.
Brilliant
It's
minds.
still going to come down by the defense. And Tom Jackson.
We watch our Pats games here. I've watched Celtics NBA playoff games. I was here when the Bruins won the Cup. I was in this place when the Bruins won the Cup in 11. We had a great time.
This camera, and wrap it up.
All right, well, that's going to do it for the Jimmy Sports Talk, live streaming on YouTube from the Knobscott Cafe in Framingham, Massachusetts. For Jimmy Young, Jimmy Myers. I'm Joe Perlman, and sorry to steal your line. That's what it is in sports.
Oh, I love it. Well done, Joe. Terrific job. Welcome back to the Jimmy Young One-on-One Show. Today we are talking with Rabbi J. Perlman from Temple Beth Shalom, one of the more popular personalities around the Needham area, and we're so happy that he's able to spend some time with us. One of the things about that show that I do, Rabbi J., is I work with my mentor, Jimmy Myers, a gentleman that I've known since 1977, during a time in Boston where race was a huge issue. It was the beginning of the busing crisis in Boston. And here were two people, Jimmy and Jimmy. I met him when I was 20 years old as a junior, and I ended up producing sports for him and with him for about 10 months. No one knew that I was actually interning at BZ for about 6 months because I was on the weekends, and nobody knew, which was fine because it gave me a longer time, and Jimmy and I really bonded and maintain our friendship to this day. In fact, I've learned plenty of lessons from Mr. Myers, both positive and negative, let's just say. But what I'd like to ask you is, who is your mentor in your profession? Because I'm guessing there's somebody out there who influenced you.
I mean, I've been blessed. I've had a lot of really great role models over the years. When I was in college, Rabbi David Wyman at Temple Shalom in Newton played a very big role in my life. I was graduating high school and I was looking for a job, and he pulled me into Temple Shalom to do some teaching, and so he really helped set the stage for me, to help me to understand what it means to be a rabbi and what it means to be such a gracious leader. I mean, he was really a role model for that. Rabbi Jeffrey Serkman, he's out of Larchmont Temple in Larchmont, New York. And I interned with Jeff, with Rabbi Serkman for 4 years while I was in rabbinical school. A really menschy, sweet, thoughtful, funny, also a sports fan, and also from Boston. So,
of course, everybody from Boston, for the most part, are sports fans. So what does it mean to be a rabbi to you, Jay?
For me, being a rabbi it's a blessing. I mean, I get to spend time with lots of very, very special people. I get to meet and speak with and share. But for me, I think that one of the most important things is that I'm blessed to be invited into people's life journey, and to celebrate with them in times of great joy, which I love to do, and to try to be supportive and to try to help allow for Jewish tradition and Jewish text and Jewish teaching, to in some way help be supportive in a time of need. It means working with people of all ages. I was with our preschool just this morning, and I'm going to be with some of the older members of our community later on today, and it's a joy. It's just a joy.
In fact, if I remember your preschool, that would be Mrs. Applestein's class?
Used to be, yeah.
Oh, no, it used to be, okay.
Well
and
done.
Mrs. Levine's class?
Oh my gosh,
right?
You're good.
Well, no, I know both of them well. Maury was my intern.
Yeah.
And needless to say, the Applesteins are pretty special to me, too.
As they should.
Let's get back to the example I was giving earlier and talking a little bit about Jimmy and myself. In a difficult time, a African-American man and a Jewish man from Newton became friends. We became friends through sport and the fact that we shared a very small office. We really didn't have much choice. This generation now that's growing up in their teens and in their 20s, far more tolerant than what I saw back in the day. You mentioned how hatred is truly a learned behavior. I find that this generation is far more tolerant about everything, whether it's skin color or religion. They don't care. How do you find what's going on now compared to what it was like?
It's hard for me to go back 30, 40.
I lived 30, 40
years.
years. That's why I live in the 70s to this day. I get a lot of stuff from that.
I do think that society has, to the extent that I can say, I do think that society has matured. I do think that we've raised the level of expectation with regards to what it means to be righteous and good and understanding. And at the very same time, I have stopped being surprised that these lessons, these values, they need to be taught to every single generation and to every single child. That these are not genes that are born within us, that we have the responsibility to bring that lesson forward to each and every generation as it comes. We should never take for granted that, oh, well, that's just human nature, because quite honestly, we know this, it's not. And so each generation has the responsibility and the role of bringing this forward to them.
You know, I was able to work with one of the great men of the New England area, Lenny Zakem, the late Lenny Zakem of the ADL. And I remember how important it was to him to embrace not just the people that you're comfortable with, the same, but ask questions about people who are different from you. Here in Needham, I think there's a pretty good interfaith that you tend to embrace each other. Talk a little bit about the importance of finding out what the differences are in different religions and how that experience has been.
So, I mean, we have a wonderful interfaith, I think, community here in Needham. Our Needham Clergy Association is outstanding. We are friends as well as colleagues. And look, all of our traditions teach from a place of each and every person is created in the image of God. In Hebrew, it's B'Tselem Elohim, that there's a spark of holiness in each, and that we have a responsibility to see that spark whenever we look into the eyes of another person. And that the opportunity to tap into that is there always. And so when we get to know each other, it's first and foremost important to understand, so what do we share? Help me to get to know you. And so I think that spirit is very much a part of the Needham community. I certainly see it amongst the clergy, and as the clergy shares with me really their communities, I think it's just part of who the congregations, who the population of our community happens to be, which is a wonderful thing.
That's a great answer. That's terrific to hear that too. And again, it is so important to embrace each other and ask the questions. If you don't know about somebody, how are you ever going to learn unless you ask questions?
Well, and what it does, quite honestly, is that if you create a foundation of understanding and friendship, which sounds commonsensical, but how often it doesn't happen, what it then allows you to do is it gives you a strong enough platform to then disagree. So something comes up, and you know what? I actually see things differently. I see things I strongly disagree with you. But what happens then is you've got a strong enough foundation upon which you can actually have that conversation and disagree respectfully, learn from each other, and then move forward. And you create a relationship that is authentic and grounded. So.
That's great. And I got to talk to you a little bit about Israel, the state of Israel. As usual, the Jewish state is in the middle of a whole bunch of other countries who don't even believe it exists. It's a very tough survival, day-to-day life that they encounter. Right. You've gone to Israel, I know, and led trips in the past. I certainly know a few people have gone on some of those trips.
Yes.
How important is it for people to go and visit and experience what Israel is all about?
So just carrying over from the conversation that we just had with respect to just understanding differences and where people come from, and not making assumptions. I think that just as with people, when you go and you experience and you ask questions and you engage and you start to see the soul of another person, in the same way, I mean, Israel is a miracle. It's a miracle. It's a miracle of democracy in the Middle East. It is a country like any other country that has its struggles and its difficulties and its challenges and its questions. But Israel is a place where there is a vibrant culture and democracy and education system and technology. We have a large group, thankfully, from our community going. We have about 80 people from our congregation going in about a month's time. And people's understanding of Israel changes dramatically when you move from the headlines to the streets. And you start to meet the people who are there, and you start having conversations. And you meet people who are Israeli, you meet people who are Palestinian, and you start to talk and engage and try to and you realize that everybody in the region is deserving of peace and security and prosperity. And the tragedy is that is far from the reality today.
Yeah, absolutely. Interestingly enough, and I hate to date interviews because we want them to be evergreen, but in Boston tonight, the Cleveland Cavaliers are playing the Boston Celtics. The Cleveland Cavaliers are now led by a coach named David Blatt from Framingham, Massachusetts, and I'm pretty sure that he's of Jewish faith. He coached in Israel as well as in Europe for many, many
Tel
years.
Aviv, right?
Yes, Tel Aviv Maccabi, Maccabi Tel Aviv, however you look at it. And it's a fun game that a lot of Jewish people play when they watch games. Is he Jewish or isn't he Jewish? Who's Jewish? He sounds like he's Jewish. Is he Jewish? And of course, there's something called Google. I'm sure you're familiar with that, that you can find out these things. It's a fun game, but I always wonder, what does it matter? These are football players. They're basketball players. ML Carr told me once, it's not black players and white players. It's basketball players. Right. And that's really what it comes down to, isn't it? Especially in sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the Jewish community, a dynamic that we find that I find in the Jewish community, a lot of people find in the Jewish community, is that Judaism is not just a religion. It's a culture and it's a people. And I think that oftentimes people tap into the sense of family. And so when you meet somebody or you find somebody who sees something that's going on, it's like, are they part of the family? And that's not to say that they're more special than anybody else. All it does is I think that it acknowledges that there's a connection, that it's some kind of, we share something. And so that's why people, I think, very often look to that. And they're proud when somebody is Jewish and they excel and they celebrate. And there's disappointment, profound disappointment, when somebody does something that is not a reflection of Judaism's values, when they do that in the public sphere, and there's a level of disappointment and shame.
And I think you could actually have that same statement with Italian people, Irish people.
Yeah.
It's because you identify
Sure.
with something that they have.
Absolutely.
And sport allows you to do that, because it truly is a all-encompassing, embracing. That's why I love the Olympics so much. And the Olympics doesn't get a lot of publicity around here except every 4 years. And of course, they're trying to bring the Olympics to Boston, and all my friends and old friends in the media are trying to diss it and get rid of it. It would be one of the most incredible experiences to have that event in my hometown, in the backyard. You must enjoy the Olympics too, because it's truly about sport and embracing differences.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Olympics are great. The Olympics are great. I didn't grow up loving the Olympics as much, but my wife, Emily, she's a big Olympics fan, and so my daughter, Liana, and now son, Jonah, they're really thrilled about the Olympics, and we watch, and we take it all in. And it's just great to see, because they're amateur.
Careful. There's no such thing as an amateur anymore, Rabbi Jay. They're as professional as some others.
There you go.
But they're all professional.
Well said.
But they all play for the love of the game, the sport. And even golf is now going to be in the Olympics. Guys that are out there playing golf and making millions are still going to be able to compete for gold, silver, and bronze medals representing their countries. And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, for me, it's great to see lesser known sports or lesser profiled sports and lesser known athletes getting onto the world stage and giving us stories and profiles that are just worthy of celebration.
Okay, so who's your favorite Jewish athlete?
Sandy Koufax.
It's got to be.
Sandy Koufax.
Now, I remember 1964 when he did not pitch on Yom Kippur. And being of the Jewish faith, it meant a lot to me, because I could identify with that, because I knew how special that holiday was in my family. Strange thing is, in 1978, when that one-game playoff happened with the Yankees and Red Sox,
I vaguely remember it.
The parents didn't use the tickets because it was Yom Kippur. They sent the kids along.
Wow.
So I got to be there to deal with that as well. So you can imagine, I was in the locker room for 86. I was 1970. My family had never seen.
I'm starting to see a trend.
Yeah, I was going to say, had never seen
we need to keep you
World
out
Series winners, okay? Because we just haven't been in 2013, 2004, 2007. So don't worry, the family will stay and we'll watch it on television. Rabbi Jay Perlman, thank you so much.
Great to see you.
For coming in. We were working on this for a couple of years, and now we got it done, and I so appreciate chatting with you, and I hope the people at home enjoyed that conversation as well.
Thank you. I enjoyed being with you, and I look forward to seeing you at Temple.
Yes, sir. I will be. Yes, sir. I will be there.
Amen.
All right, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So that'll do it for the one-on-one interview show with myself, Jimmy Young, for Jay Perlman, for Mark Mandel back in the booth, along with Brianna and Chris Dugan, and is it Matt? I got it. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.